Start. Let me know when. You ready? Got Osama bin Laden hanging with the Taliban, standing in Afghanistan on the lam, running from the army man. You got Islamic jihad, oh my God, just running from the Mossad, blowing up the countryside, keeping women, children, trying to hide. Where's it gonna end? Where's it gonna go? What? I'll start again.
This needs to be lowered just a little bit.
Okay, we'll start over again then.
Okay.
Okay. We can start again. Okay. Okay. We'll just take 2.5. Osama bin Laden. Osama bin Laden hanging with the Taliban, scamming in Afghanistan, on the lam, running from the army man. You got Islamic jihad, oh my God, just running from the Mossad, blowing up the countryside, killing women, children, trying to hide. You got the Hamas and Hezbollah, laws, wiping out the children, killing daughters, wives and sons, fathers on their bloody run. When's it gonna end? Where's it gonna go? Is there any hope for us? Only God knows. You got Yasser Arafat. What's up with that? Running up Kiev, trying to figure out where to go. The bloodlust flows, don't you know? Stomping on the rainbows. You got Syria and Lebanon and Libya raring to go. Gaddafi going for the fear, don't you know? Saddam Hussein and the Iranis too, trying to wipe out all the Jews. When's it gonna end? Where's it gonna go? Is there hope for us? Only God knows. You got your misguided martyrdom, misbegotten Islam, spewing chaos, hatred, murder, and mayhem. You got Ben Netanyahu trying to save all the Jews. You got Ariel Sharon being forced to choose. Land for peace, no one to win, only lose. Osama bin Laden, hanging with the Taliban, hiding in Afghanistan, on the lam running from the army man. You got the CIA, you got the SEALs, you got the Green Berets, chasing after the Taliban. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, you got Osama bin Laden hanging with the Taliban, stranded in Afghanistan on the left, running from the army man. You got the special forces, the SEALs, chasing after the Taliban. Meanwhile, back at the ranch. On a lighter note, this one's called Straight Ahead and Nail It. Nail it, the way to go. Straight ahead and nail it, it's the way to go. Straight ahead and nail it, just goes to show. Seize the moment, rock and roll. Seize the moment, rock and roll. Seize the moment to your very soul. Just keep the faith, don't let it go. Just keep the faith, don't let it go. Just keep the faith, you will, you know. What's happening, baby? What's on your plate? What's happening, babe? What's on your plate? What's happening, baby? Ain't life great? Straight ahead and nail it, that's the way to go. Straight ahead and nail it, that's the way to go. Straight ahead and nail it, just goes to show. Keep on trucking, on your way. Just keep on trucking, on your way. Keep on trucking to a brand new day. What's on your mind? I want to know what's on your mind. I gotta know what's on your mind. Baby, don't let go. Straight ahead and nail it. It's the way to go. Straight ahead and nail it. The only way to go. Straight ahead and nail it. Just goes to show. Seize the moment. Rock and roll. Just seize the moment. Rock and roll. Seize the moment. To the very soul. Straight ahead and nail it. It's the way to go. Straight ahead and nail it. It's the way to go. Straight ahead and nail it. Just goes to show. The way to go. Straight ahead and nail it. It's the only way to go. Straight ahead and nail it. Just goes to show. Seize the moment. Rock and roll. Just seize the moment. Just rock and roll. Seize the moment. To your very soul. Okay, I don't know which one it is.
Sounded good, Jack.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. We're running late.
We'll just do this another time. We can do it another time because we have to do it.
Okay, yeah, we're all set down, we'll set up, I guess we'll set up the normal way.
Do it the
How
normal-
they want, see, the reason we left everything down, but I don't quite,
What was going on? They just set this up. We couldn't set up because they did that.
we
Do you want to
have
use that black background with our regular thing?
Hey, Jack, we can do it later too, and, yeah, just come.
As long as they can get you, then they can always turn you down, but I think it's worse when they can't pick you up. Yeah.
Got it set.
Yeah. Oh, we're gonna have fun tonight.
Frank, why am I hearing this little chirp in my earphone? Sounds like the tape is rubbing against the wheel. It doesn't bother me that much. Just hope it isn't going through. He can hear it on his phone.
Hey, Jack, who's the one that controls like the camera when somebody's talking? Can the camera be on that?
He's doing that.
Oh, good. Yeah. Since we're all so adorable looking that he could put the camera on the one that's talking. One show I watched,
Hey,
and
Frank?
I'm up there, just the pictures there,
I
but
think he's got his.
Do you keep your
Yeah,
shows?
yeah,
I
it's
hope
kinda
you
fun
do.
to keep 'em
Yeah.
on, you know.
You get
Yeah, I
to
think
see
so.
all the
It's fun
changes.
to have a
and-
copy. Today was, my eyes are
Yeah.
kind of swollen. It was an emotional day. My son
Oh,
was
really?
in court today and everything, so
Oh,
it's
boy.
just all behind me though, and things turned out good.
Good.
But this morning, I had a little tears going this morning, so
Oh,
do I look okay for
you
that?
look just grand. Oh. At least it turned out. We're ready.
I think we're set.
Okay, anytime you want to start.
All right, it's ready to roll, I guess, huh? Hi, my name is Johna Coons, and I'd like to welcome everybody tonight to Voices on the Wind. And I'm especially excited. I've got some friends here that I've actually know, and it's Sandra Sitzman and Lawrence Kennedy, and they travel all around the country, maybe the world. Have you guys been different countries, I'm sure, doing what you do? But they lecture and teach classes, and they're always up to something new. So tonight we're going to be talking about some of the things that they do regularly and some of the new things that they're up to. But just for the quick feng shui of the week tip, I've decided tonight to give you a tip about, with feng shui, the directions bring in different energy from all the different directions, and each of the different directions are associated with a trigram and a number and a different element and different symbols that represent those different directions. And then what happens is annually different energies will be shifted around, and the Chinese were very good at documenting the different cycles that the energy would move in. As we know, life goes in cycles, and since it's about a 6,000-year-old science, they got it down pretty much to a science as far as the different cycles that would go. And I know Lawrence is going to be telling us about some cycles that we go through, like with the solar flares and things like that. So I think we were all used to the idea that life kind of goes in cycles. Well, this particular year, for the annual number in the center of the Bagua, which we use in feng shui, is the number 8. And that this year represents a lot of different things, but one of the things, you might have friends that have had accidents with their limbs, because that's what I'm seeing. A lot of my friends are coming in with broken arms and broken legs, and they've stumbled and fallen and hurt themselves that way. So the limbs are real important this year. And it also represents young male energy, and so our young men and young boys and things are subject to a little bit more accidents. They're more prone to accidents this year. And then I was also going to mention that each year we want to watch out for a couple of the numbers. They're earth energies, specifically the 2. It's represented by the number 2, which is the Kun trigram, and the number 5, which is at the original center of the Bagua. These 2 earth energies can create some problems, accidents, disaster, sickness, and this year the 5 is coming from the southwest. So if you have a home that faces the southwest, then this year you're particularly susceptible to that type of energy, more than a house that would say, let's face north or something like that. And so each year we want to watch out where the 5 and the 2 are coming from. This year the 2 energy is coming from the northeast, and that's the sickness star. So many of you that have maybe bedrooms in the northeast or have houses that face the northeast might find that you have a few more sicknesses this year and problems that way. And I've already talked to one gal who came into the office that she says she's hardly ever sick, but this year she's having quite a spell of sickness and some gallbladder problems and things, and we looked it up, and sure enough she's in a bedroom in the northeast this year. So these things really are important to watch out for. And I own the little feng shui center down on 115 West Main, and anytime that you'd like, you can stop by and I'll give you a little printout that lets you know where the annual numbers are and where they're located in the Bagua this year. So that's a little tip of the week for feng shui, and I'm real excited to get to hear what's going on in your lives. They live up in Kalispell right now.
Polson.
In Polson. I'm sorry, I was thinking you guys came all the way down from Kalispell.
Well, we moved.
You moved down to Polson.
It's been since '95, though.
Now they came
Yes.
through a snowstorm tonight to get here, so I'm really,
Right.
really happy to have you, and we really
We
appreciate
slid
you
down
being
the
here.
hill.
One of the things I know, I had them at the Feng Shui Center. It was already about a year ago or a year and a half ago maybe, and they did a class for us there, and we learned a lot of things about dowsing and solar flares and many different things, how energy works. And we learned a little bit about Kirlian photography. That's something that they do on a regular basis. And I know Sandra does massage therapy, and Lawrence is a wonderful speaker that gets up in front of crowds and does the lectures and things. So I'm going to turn it over to you two now, and let's talk about what you'd like to share with the audience tonight first.
Okay, well, perhaps we should start with the Kirlian. What we have developed actually is Lawrence has done a lot of research with Kirlian photography, and so
Can you explain to us, Sandra, what Kirlian photography is? Because I know a lot of
Sure.
people don't know what it is.
Kirlian photography is actually photographing the energy field or the aura of the body. And in order to do that, we're using a high frequency equipment in order to capture the little fingertips. And actually, I can show you some examples so that you can see
That comes
what
up.
those look like. And what we're doing are the four fingers, because each finger will represent a level. So instead of just saying we're a physical body, we're actually going to capture what's going on with the mental body, the emotional, the physical, and the intuitive levels. So that way we are much more all-encompassing, and we can begin to recognize the where the challenge is, at what level, what is the cause,
And where
what is
some
the real
blocks are and
cause.
things like that within
Well,
it.
the blocks actually will show up with, like this first set is very dim. So those would be very weak.
So
If
that's
you
a-
can see, those are very weak.
So that's a person that doesn't have a lot of energy.
Not very little energy. And so we would say they are energy deficient. The second set is actually after a treatment. Now there's lots of ways that we can work with a person, and we'll share some of those later in the program here as we continue. But we can see how nicely they brightened up. So the strengths actually are when the little fingertips look bright and don't have breaks. Now we still see a break here at this one particular level. And that looks like the intuitive fingers. So we have the mental, the physical, the emotional, and the intuitive levels. And those four levels will register the cause. The first row is going to, each one we're doing twice, and the first row is actually going to measure the conscious state, which is your beta brainwave frequency state. And then the second row is going to register when you're more relaxed. And we take that with the Ankh to help change the brainwave frequency so that an individual will be more relaxed, and actually it really should be considered the normal state, brainwave frequency. But unfortunately, because of the stress in the world,
Today
it's
we're
not
at-
really considered that. It's sort of, we've reversed our level of relaxation.
That doesn't surprise me at all, the way everybody's rushing around nowadays.
And then each of these can be analyzed, and Lawrence has developed the method, and the chart here shows how we can show the different levels. Each color, the blue, it's a color coding system. So the blue would register the intuitive level. The red would register the physical level, and so on. So it will help. Okay. There we go.
Yeah, that's a pretty good picture of it right
There we go.
When you were at the Feng Shui Center, I remember my memory takes me back to, there were some people that had their Kirlian photography taken, and you mentioned something about star.
Star people.
Could
Yes.
you tell them how that would show up maybe?
Well, it actually shows up on this little finger. This is a good example. And the little finger shows up a little more like, I always call it like a little comet tail. And it's very focused. And it may show up or it may not show up. So it will tell us if we are actually using our star energy or not using our star energy. Sometimes people will also come to us and they just feel great. And we can do a photograph and they may not show up very well. So this will definitely register their electromagnetic energy and the chemistry of their body. And Lawrence might want to talk a little bit more about that.
I think I ought to give a little of the history on it. For those who maybe are not completely aware of Kirlian, Kirlian photography came about from the Soviet Union. At least they got credit for it. Semyon Kirlian and his wife. But really, my research shows that it goes back into the 30s, that the photographs were being taken in black and white in the 30s, and even before that, Dr. Nikola Tesla was the inventor of alternating current, which is what we use, high frequency, high voltage, to take the pictures, which is the same as the body, and that's the point. But Semyon got credit for it. The Soviets have a habit of doing that, and what actually came out of that is that behind the Soviet bloc was the Romanians at that time, back in the early 70s. And Dr. Thelma Moss, who was a leading researcher at UCLA, brought it back from the Soviet Union to Romania because she was very impressed with the phantom leaf effect as a beginning element. And I think you have it down here, a couple of sheets down. The phantom leaf effect was a proof that when you cut a leaf away, that you have an image that still remains after the leaf has physically been cut away. And to her mind, that was proof that the metaphysical aura existed, and scientifically it could be demonstrated. So she was given a 10-year grant at UCLA to study this phenomena, and I was brought in 1975 because of my research with the Geller children, which is leading up to Star Children here in the conversation. I had a death experience 30 years ago, which started me on all this as an advertising executive, and I did my doctorate work, completed my doctorate work in parapsychology, and the work that I did in my doctorate was actually specializing in bioelectrics of the body, meaning phenomena that was being produced, the paranormal, by what they called at that time the Geller children, which were doing things like Uri Geller was doing, those of you who would remember that. Uri Geller was bending spoons and moving objects at a distance and so forth, telekinesis and psychokinesis. And so I was brought in because my whole focus at that time was studying these Geller children, including my own son, which, to my surprise, I found out that he was one of them, Chris Kennedy. And they did a lot of documentaries on him. He made a lot of front page newspapers in the San Fernando Valley at that time, and stirred up quite a bit of attention. So it was a way that I could measure this. And Uri Geller's fingertip, as an example, and the children that were like him, would light up quite bright, and they could actually extend a flare when bending a spoon or starting a watch. That was an extension of the aura would go out, and that was proof that there was something other than just the physical body. And so that piqued my interest as a main tool. At that time, they had very expensive equipment, and Kendall Johnson was one of the leading electrical engineers that had developed massive equipment at UCLA to do this. And after watching this, I realized that we could bring it down into a briefcase. And I took it into the field to get field research on it, to take it to the people instead of having them always being brought back to UCLA. And it wasn't like the motion picture things, but it was, in order to do that, we had to go to Polaroid, which is what we're using here. Okay, this example that is shown. Here is Polaroid film. So I was able to take it into Polaroid and into a portable unit.
Yeah, I've seen you with the unit that you bring in, and that's probably much more handy than what they started out with. I wanted to ask you, because before I forget, Lawrence, you mentioned briefly that you had an accident, a trauma, and you know there's been many people that I've even interviewed here on the show that have had similar experiences where it seemed to connect them more with their higher self. Can you tell me a little bit about what that
Well, that's
phenomenon is?
exactly what happened, and I want to make it easy and plug Brad Steiger's book. He's a very well-known author. He wrote, after I've known him for 20-some years, and after about 15 years of badgering me to put it into a book, and I never could quite get past the first chapter, he finally said, well, if you're not going to do it, I will, and if with your permission. So I allowed him to put it in a book called Destined to Love, and I think it came out in about something like 97, maybe 96, 97, something like that, in paperback version. And he describes my passage on the other side. Now, interestingly enough, I was a paramedic, air sea rescue chopper pilot, and so I knew a lot about emergency medicine. And they said that they revived me, and that I should have had brain damage or something, because I was like 30 minutes on the other side. And so they brought me back, and they didn't think they were going to be able to. And so I went through the classic tunnel toward the light, met a couple of entities on the other side that weren't exactly, they were human form, but I would describe them more like extraterrestrials, or what I know now today. And they told me that I needed to consider going back to complete what I came here to do. And I didn't have a clue as to what that was, because I thought I was successful. So that was a turning point, and it completely changed my life. And I pursued something that I didn't even believe in before, because of 12 years of formal education and psychology and philosophy, I had no concept of the paranormal. We didn't think it was real, and in my formal training. So it was completely a reversal, and that's what started this whole thing.
Boy, it's a wonderful story. I got to read that book. What's it called again? It's the
Destined to Love.
Destined to Love by
Brad Steiger.
By Brad Steiger. Okay, so you'll have to pick up that book, everybody. I'll have to carry it down at the Feng Shui Center.
Yes.
To order some. But you know, I've heard that before, that many people have that never even believed in the metaphysical or whatever have had these experiences which totally turn them around. So I'm not surprised, but it's kind of.
And they also told me that I had no clue as to what I was being launched into. Even though I did my doctorate work in this area, I had no practical field experience. And I said, how can I get out there and do this? And they said, don't worry about it. You'll be coached as you go along, and as you evolve, there'll be others that will follow us. And so these two that I met on the other side, and I could describe them, but it would take too long. It's in the book. They were a little unusual, male, female. And they did stick around for some time, and most of this information that I get and have received over the last 30 years, and all these inventions and procedures and things that we utilize, has come from this source as I have progressed, like on-the-job training, because that's exactly how I had to do it.
So we might say that you channel some of the knowledge that they give you, kind of. Is that what you? Well,
like everything, I made the agreement that everything would have to come through my higher self, and he would have to check it out and okay it, because I didn't really know, I didn't have the experience to be able to discern these things.
Right.
And so I said, after coming back and my body, healing my body, and going through a lot of very evidential things that were very paranormal for myself, I realized that this was real, and I just had a hard time trying to explain it, because at that time, in 1971, Moody's book hadn't even come out on the first book on life after death experiences, or near death experiences, they call it. So there was no data on it, and they just still thought you had fried something in your brain or hallucinating, and
it's more like you've done a valve or something that makes it easier to communicate.
Now, of course, there's all kinds of books out there about it, and all kinds of medical people in the medical establishment have done major studies on it and given it credence. So now it's a different story, but then it was very different.
Well, you're one of the pioneers. I know. The other question that I had before I forget, if you don't mind, when you mentioned the children who had showed up with real bright, Would that be similar to what they're talking about, the indigo children?
Yes, it is.
Is that
what's going on? Our research has been 20 years talking about what we call star children. And the little finger again will indicate the star person energy or star children. We usually call them star people. And Brad Steiger actually started doing the research on it, but I think we've done a lot more research once the ball got rolling because we've done the curling and we can photograph it. Today it's called the indigos, so it's a similar thing. And it used to be called the Geller children before we coined it as the star people.
Oh, yeah.
So it's all synonymous, but what we're seeing is that these children are very unusual. They're coming in with very great gifts. They're very psychic. They're very telepathic. They're very tuned in. They have many talents and many gifts. The one challenge sometimes is that they don't know how to adjust to the world or cope.
I was just listening to a tape about it the other day, and and I was thinking about that. But this is not an easy world to cope with right now, anyway, but for these children coming in.
Especially for them.
There's
generally,
too much, isn't it? It's just almost
is.
like too much.
Actually, we define the star people. Some of the characteristics of the star people is that they're very sensitive, and sometimes we say they're allergic to the planet Earth because they're so sensitive. And often, or sometimes, we find those that are suicidal, especially when they're younger. But as they learn to come more into their own energy and find out more who they really are and find some commonality with other star people, then they begin to feel a little more comfortable. But they feel very alone sometimes because their energy is just totally different, and they're different. They don't know why.
They feel and they see more probably too than a lot of people.
They're often clairvoyant, or they have their gifts that not everybody else understands. Their friends may not understand. Their family especially usually doesn't understand, and they feel like they're the oddball, the black sheep in the family.
Is there like an age group we can kind of tell the audience
well,
look out for,
actually,
or not?
no. Actually, it's a little misnomer by saying star children. It really encompasses all ages. Indigo children are labeled today because there are waves of indigos coming in now again. But in the past, when you look back at our great pioneers, we see like our Nikola Tesla, and we see Madame Blavatsky and all the old Edgar Cayce,
like a sprinkling of star children then.
And it's like they were the pioneers, and they were the brilliant, bright star children, or the indigos. Now today we're seeing another wave of them coming in, and they're coming in many, many more numbers now. So yes, we could label them as children. And what I would suggest, especially to parents, is that they need to learn how to cope with these kind of children because they're different. And it's not always easy to deal with the differences, although they're often very bright. They're very bright, which can present its own challenges. I know when I taught school, I know that this one child was definitely, and at that time I didn't have any understanding of star people, but this one I just knew was special. And there were others along the way, but this one stands out, and he was just brilliant, and the kids loved him, and he was bright, and he moved ahead like a couple of grades and advanced his work, and he was also very sensitive, and these are often the characteristics. The indigos have been coming in waves, though, for many years, and also now the children are coming in greater numbers. So I think that's kind of significant.
I might want to add that the process of discovering star children and the like, to go back to this again, has facilitated the definition of these fingers. At first at UCLA, we didn't know what we were looking at when we saw breaks, and let me just use another one for an example here. We didn't know what we were looking at, and when we saw unusual things that were occurring like this underneath the little finger, particularly, we knew that it was creating phenomena because there's nothing there to photograph, and you're not making contact. In curling, you have to put your hand in the glove and make contact. That's how the film is done. So the major breakthrough on this came through when we found out what each finger was. And that came about through my work in 1977. I was lecturing with Dr. Bernard Jensen, who was the father of iridology, bringing it to this country. He's a chiropractor, and he passed away the early part of this year, 95, and so he brought iridology to this country 40 years ago or more, and that's the study of the iris of the eye, and it's very, very effective, it's very accurate, and it actually goes back 3,000 years in Chinese medicine. And because I was lecturing with him on the circuit, the National Health Federation circuit and such, he became convinced in his mind that there was a connection between Kirlian photography, the tips of the fingers, and the iris of the eye. But we just had to sit down and figure out what it was. And sure enough, through poring over his patients' eye photos, it came up, and taking their photos of the Kirlian. And it came up as a break, which is a short circuit, in the same place that the little inclusions were on the iris of the eye. And the chart was almost identical, and so to what we were showing earlier here, and that Sandra was explaining, this chart is based on the work that we did to establish the connection between Kirlian and iridology, because it's really an iridology chart taken from Bernard's work that he allowed me to modify it, and we found that the positions were in the same, the breaks were in the same position, the little inclusions were on the iris of the eye. So then it was a matter of each finger was not the same. So we had to take one at a time, and it took about 15 years to get it down to about 85% accuracy, so that each finger was a different circuit, not to just different organs, yes, but to different levels of the body. And we discovered that because they were imitating each other, but not exactly the same. So like she said before, this is the mental, and this is the physical, the emotional, and the intuitive, which is also the genetic coding by which the star people come in on, okay? So we can identify them immediately.
We might mention a little bit, here's another example of a star finger, this one
Hold it.
right here.
Yes.
You can capture that.
Yes, with the little comet trail.
Right. And what's happening with the star people is that, as Lawrence just mentioned, they will come in genetically very different, and it shows when we photograph it on the little finger. This genetic difference is actually an expanded DNA. Supposedly, some of the research is showing that their DNA is totally different than other people's DNAs, and that the so-called junk DNA that the scientists are talking about a lot now, they don't know what it is, but they are calling it junk, and it really is the transformation of the new strands that these children or people have developed, because over time they've been able to genetically and ability-wise been able to make changes in their system.
It's also exciting, and I know our scientists are going to find out more and more about the DNA that we're going to be able to relate all this to. But I did have to mention and give a plug to our producer Frank, because I wasn't sure if you two knew that Frank has been doing we called it iridology. Maybe we're pronouncing it wrong, because I heard you say iridology, the study of the eyes. Frank's been doing that for years, and he does that on Tuesdays and Saturdays at the Feng Shui Center.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
I knew he was doing the palmistry.
Yeah, and he's been noticing a lot of the young kids that come into the center and get their eyes read. He's seeing a lot of bright new things with these kids.
Well, we identify, actually, we don't need to do a Kirlian photograph, because we've worked with them so much, we can identify them with a little sparkle in their eyes, you know, it's like
we call them twinklers, because, and also that they, I might say that they represent, by Brad's research in 40 years, he came out with a chart in the very first book called Star People, and now the more recent one he's updated called Star Born. I think that was written in about 1995, something to that effect, or 96, and it's again in paperback version, and so people can go in there and find out the upgraded work on it. But in the original, they left the chart out of the second version accidentally, I think, and it had 22 questions in it by which he would determine if a person was a star person. And those 22 questions related to physical, psychological, and so forth elements. And when they're more than 70% or greater answering to the positive, that's how he identified star people with this questionnaire. And every time that we reprinted the questionnaire, and every time we see that little comment trail, that little finger light up, then they always
They
answer.
get their little questionnaire, and it's usually, yeah, right, yes. One of the characteristics is an extra vertebrae
Oh.
in the neck, usually.
That's amazing. I was going to say that we're going to be sure and get your phone number and do you have a website too?
Yes.
And things like that?
Yes.
Because I know a lot of the audience are probably going to want to call for the questionnaire.
Right.
And maybe take the questionnaire about the star people.
Also, I would like to add that I know that you're a star lady.
Well, do you think that's why I brought it up in the first place? No, but I remember
know.
that you said that when we did
That
my
little
curling
finger.
photography.
Yes.
When we did your photograph, it was there, shining brightly.
So I can brag to be a twinkler, huh?
Right.
Most people, when we do identify them, they're not surprised if they've heard the phrase at all, even without reading the book, because they know they're different.
Yeah,
know.
you know you're a little
And
different. Like in my
sometimes-
family, I was the
yeah.
different one. you
Yes.
know. Mhm.
But you know, sometimes we did when we actually worked Salt Lake City a lot. It was pretty for the women when they would come along. We'd say, "Wait, you're a star lady," and they'd go, and we would describe it, and they'd go, "Oh yeah, that really fits," but don't tell anybody. You know, it's like I'm still in this role that I'm playing. You know, so it takes development of that sometimes. And now we go back there and we see totally different women. They've come out more. They're much more assertive, and it changes.
I
But
see it
it's-
happening everywhere,
Yes.
yeah, and it is exciting because I think even just having the show where people can listen to different practitioners like yourselves talk about these things, I think it helps to open up people's minds a little bit more. We're all a little bit
Right.
nervous to open up our minds sometimes, for something new, but it gets me excited. So I'm hoping that'll spread, a little bit.
Yes,
so.
and we appreciate you doing the show for
Yeah.
that reason.
Well, I have a ball doing this, so. All right, well, I want
It's a
to
fun
go
night.
on with whatever you guys have brought tonight to show us.
One other thing, I did start to mention that Lawrence did develop a method of analyses for the Kirlian, and this is our little chart for that. What we have is a method that we can actually tell you what's going on with your life at all the levels, and we can do, normally we'll do a photo and we can give some basics, but we can also go in depth a lot. And
We
Lawrence
can-
actually did develop that
We
quite a
can,
few years ago already.
yes, we can actually pick up environmental stresses as well as dietary. Almost actually all levels of the body show up on the Kirlian because it's electromagnetic and the body is governed by electromagnetic. Everything that happens has a counterpart.
Is it similar when people, some people are familiar with when they have the aura photographers at a show or something. Is it a little bit different from that?
Yes, it is. This is the scientific process and the first one. This is what the scientific community has recognized, and I don't want to throw any water on that one.
No.
But unfortunately, one of the things that we discovered at UCLA after all those documentaries that were made back in the 70s with the beautiful colors and everything,
Yeah.
if you remember any of those, I was there when that was being done in those portraits. And they were beautiful work, but when we started to really put it past scientific scrutiny, there was only one way to photograph the aura because the aura is magnetic, and you cannot photograph the aura with a lens camera, as simple as that. So immediately there was the discerning going on this, that what the camera is seeing with those colors is two invisible light spectrums, ultraviolet and infrared, at either end of the light spectrum. That's what shows up, and what you don't see in normal photography, they have a way of picking that up with lenses and a lens camera. Lens camera sees light. It does not see magnetics. Okay, the only way you can photograph magnetics of the body, which is what the aura scientifically, legitimately is by making direct contact with high frequency.
Okay.
Okay?
It's very interesting. And
Maybe we can define, and I don't know if this is going to show up really well, but we have a system that we call the Trimune System of Health, And what we're actually talking about, which shows up on the Kirlian photography, is the electromagnetic and the chemical components of an individual's being.
And that's so important because that tells you about everything about how your system's working. Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
So what we did is put together the trimune system, which is going to include the electromagnetic, the biochemical aspects, and then also we don't want to forget about the cleansing aspects, which is the enzymatic digestive process. Because if one doesn't do the process, if one isn't able to process their nutrients in the body, then our bodies become very toxic and full of chaos at many levels.
That's what was my next question was, does that include, like, you can read the toxicity levels and
Yes,
things?
we
So,
can.
yeah.
On a photograph,
Can you? Wow.
It will show up on the photograph. Now, we're using color Polaroid, and we don't get the normal colors that Dr. Thelma Moss used. She would develop hers on a regular, what do you call that? She would develop her film in a dark room
Yes.
and do a developing process. Well, we're fortunate. Lawrence developed it into using a portable, which is great, using the Polaroid. So when we get our Polaroids, sometimes we will see green. Normally you don't get that, but if you see a green fingerprint, it's the toxins that are exuding from the body coming out through that little fingertip, because the fingertip, everything will emanate out through those tips. So we might get a green.
It's like
Or they
when-
won't show up at all.
It's like when we would
That's
see the
extreme
Geller
toxicity.
energy coming out, or psychokinesis, it would come out in a beautiful red blast, or a blue, a yellow or whitish yellow blast, like a flare coming out, you see, of the finger. And so other than that, when we were doing all the colors at UCLA, and they were beautiful, but they really didn't mean anything. We had to, when we discovered scientifically that the colors could be changed with a different kind of films, or with moisture on the tip of the finger, like red, example, would come about through sexual energy, or excessive alcohol in the body would show up that way, or anger would show up that way, see? And so
all
those different
connected.
things would all show up as red, so it wasn't discernible. And so it was just a plasma discharge in association with the breaks, okay? So the breaks were the things that were really important, and the original photographs were in black and white. Actually, original were on X-ray film by Samian Kirlian. Was on X-ray film, which was reversed. So we had to go back to square one again and start over again with just the breaks and concerning ourselves with that phenomena, because there were people in the scientific community that said you can create this in too many different ways. So we had to go back to the basics again, and that's how we were able to develop the scientific procedure that the breaks around the fingertip, they call it, the Soviets called it bioplasmic energy, okay? And Dr. Thelma Moss called it the corona discharge emanating from the fingertips. And so that, instead of calling it the aura, scientifically that's what they called it, right?
Right.
Same thing.
Well, you know, this is pretty exciting for you, I think, to get to the scientific part of it. I've got this scientific mind too that always wants to know the why.
Ins and outs and
yeah,
why.
the why and the how and all of that. So it's interesting for me to hear you relate it, back and forth to how you actually broke it down into the scientific realm and things.
The toxicity also shows up in other ways. It will show up either as green. It can show up as mental toxicity or an emotional toxicity. We sometimes say stinking thinking.
Right.
And the little fingerprint won't show up very strongly at all. It can also show in the second row where if the little tips don't show up, there's a lot of toxicity or chemistry that the body, everything's been breaking down. So that's why we added and got into the little trimune chart. So what we're going to actually start talking about is the electromagnetic. I know Lawrence you want to start with that on the electromagnetic aspects. What we have found is that by using some of the tools that have been developed, you want to start with the laser probably.
I can hold some of these up for you too,
Oh,
if that'll
okay.
help. While you're talking, if it'll help me to
Okay.
have me show it.
Can you get that okay?
We'll do. Yep, that looks pretty good.
So
There you go.
Okay. This is a picture of our laser, our current one, And 22 years ago, I was introduced to lasers, big, clumsy helium lasers that were very expensive and delicate and difficult to move around. And I started the process with those. And I was introduced to that by a Nassau physicist that was brilliant. And he had left Nassau because he felt that they were going in the wrong direction. This man was a genius. He had an IQ of 186 and a photographic memory. And he was working at Nassau at 15 on teleprojection to the moon. So he introduced me to lasers, and I didn't know anything about lasers, but I had access to all these fantastic lasers that I never could have been able to have access to. So we started with the helium lasers, and this picture here is I could not patent the process that we uncovered, so I was able to only discern that this is a picture that was taken during a process of time-lapse photography, normal 35 millimeter photography, okay, of a crystal point that was about 2 inches long. It was a rather good size one, and we'll show you the live thing here in a moment. It's a smaller version, and it is being lasered. And you don't see the laser, actually you only see both ends of it on purpose so that you can see that there was nothing else hooked up to it. The beam is hitting it from the rear. And what you see is the plasma discharge going out of it. Now that is a magnetic field effect that is residual from the crystal being lasered. So I coined this, I called this crystallase, and that was the best I could do, is copyright the process. I couldn't patent it because lasers were natural and lasers were already patented. And excuse me, crystals were natural and lasers were already patented. So I had to wait until there was a major breakthrough just 5 years ago to develop the diode laser, which is much smaller. This laser, and I have two frequencies, straight and pulsing. The camera can capture that. This could be patented because this laser, which is much more removed, much more powerful than what most people are acquainted with as a pointer, you know, but it's small like that. And the patent is in the head here, all right? And what we actually have now is a supercharger that's on top of a diode laser. So when the diode lasers came out of the closet, which you see the little pointers are diode lasers, okay, but this is much stronger. It's a commercial laser. And you can see the beam on this thing when the head is removed. You can see it a mile away at night, okay, and it holds its focus. So it's very precise. But the idea is that, like the previous photograph, it's concentrated at the back of a crystal, and what happens is the crystal then modulates the frequency so that the body can handle it. Now, to make that clear, is that with all the research I did with this genius, and I've worked with him for 10 years, is that we discovered, to our disappointment, that lasers were too low a frequency to be able to enter the body properly. And the very best, we could only get a helium laser, about 20% of what you see here is the residual of all this magnetic energy, okay? You could only get 20% of that into the body because it was operating at too low a frequency, the laser, to be able to be transferred into the body by itself. But when you drove it through a crystal like that, the crystal automatically modulates the frequency so that the body can accept at least 85% of it.
Wow.
So that's what we have here. And then the second stage is the pulsing. The pulsing has been built into it and the new laser, whereas we didn't have before. The pulsing is 2 beats per second, or excited heart rate, twice the heart rate. And that is where researchers have found, and like myself, that the body goes into maximum healing. Okay, it's like an altered state of consciousness, except it's excited survival rate, so to speak. It occurs during sexual intercourse, orgasm. It occurs during when you're excited about something, or it's in a survival mode, you see, and the heart beats fast. And that is when tissue repairs itself the fastest. The regeneration and rejuvenation of the body is stepped up. So I was able to imitate that pulse in this beam, and that was a major breakthrough because it amplified what was going on with this. So rather than get too technical, this is basically a supercharger that was added onto the laser to make it.
And how we apply that is actually, the most benefit is applying it to the body. So we can work through the thymus, and we can't overstimulate because the tip will modulate the energy. So it's like the body will turn off when it's had enough. So we go through the thymus, or we can do eyes through the optic nerve, we can do ears, we can do organs, we can go to any part of the body, we can do pain. It's excellent for pain control. We have people that come to us all the time and they'll say, oh, I've had pain. One gal said, oh, I've had pain for 9 years. And she walked away in about 30 minutes or so and was pain-free. And she had tried a lot of things.
Now these are called soft lasers. They're
soft
non-cutting, non-intrusive lasers. And the information on this has come about in mostly in the last 10 to 15 years. When I started with lasers 22 years ago, they were using ruby lasers for medical surgery. They had just started to do that, to make incisions.
I know lasers have gotten really big in the hospitals and things.
And what they discovered in doing this was something brand new, that when they made the cut with a laser different than with a knife, all right, the incision on either side, the tissue on either side, the incision would heal 3 times faster.
I was just going to say it would heal much faster
than normal. See,
Yeah.
so that was simply explained in physics, because what makes a laser work is that magnetics goes off at right angles, okay, from high concentration. That's what makes a laser work. You have to have magnetics, which is what is concentrated in the head here. These little gold things are 9,000 Gauss lasers. It's 36,000 Gauss firing into the back of that beam, and it excites the electrons in here, so that what happens is it operates at maximum at this.
I have to.
It's really fast.
I know. I was going to say I have to just break in for a minute because I wanted. You got me all excited about some things that I associate, like with feng shui. You know, we were taught to use crystals to enhance the energy in a room, you know, and things, and then it can transmute negative energy into a more positive energy for all of us. And so this excites me so much because it's the crystal energy, which we know, you know, people probably don't realize all the things that crystals are used for, like in the computers. It's practically all done with
Computer chips.
with crystals.
The old flash cubes.
Right. And
The old radios.
Yeah.
Crystal radios,
and
right?
so I know they are so useful in so many things, and I see them again here now when you point this out. It excites me. And when you talked about the electromagnetic energy field is around everything, right, Lawrence? We could tell our audience that absolutely everything, even
Everything
the
has
table
energy.
which looks dead has
Everything
some
except plastic.
oh, everything.
So forget the plastic, folks.
Well, there are.
know.
This is the other question
lots.
that you made me think about, is that when you talked about the disease and the healing part, just on kind of a layman's level, I was thinking to explain it. We've been talking about in the metaphysics community and everything, you know, and people that walk into the shop, we talk about raising the vibration to a level where disease doesn't sit in.
Exactly.
And so that has to do something, it has to be
Absolutely.
related somehow to what you were just saying.
Absolutely. It's vibrational medicine maximized, because what it's doing is it's high concentration of magnetic energy to one point focus, okay? And that's, soft lasers are being used all over the world, but I hold the only patent on the laser head on this here, and patent pending on this, because I discovered way back when with that photograph is just one simple example. Actually, there's a series of 10 photographs with each taken a minute apart, and each one shows that expanding
Different stages.
more and more until finally it just burns out the whole photograph. It turns all red. And that shows that it builds as the laser goes through the crystal, that it builds, and a corona residual is coming off of that crystal. And crystals are the simple word modulate. It simply means it regulates it so the body can handle it. Crystals are the only thing on the planet that does that. Okay? Ironically, a crystal, that's what the old crystal radios would pick up the strongest signal in the area without any battery or anything, just the pressure of the crystal wrapped
They're
in
so
a little
sensitive.
headphone, and you'd pick up if it was AM, FM, or a police car or an airplane going over, whichever was the strongest frequency, it would shift and you would hear that come in. See, so that a long time ago showed me that what crystals do is modulate, and they discern whatever the strongest frequency is. So light is a natural element to be able to use a crystal through. Okay?
Well, it excites me just to hear more, even more about the crystals, because I do carry crystals there at the Feng Shui Center. And since I have been handling a lot of stones, for the last years that I've had the shop, I love the frequency that they give off and the vibration that they give off. They've helped me raise my vibration
Crystals,
just by
rocks,
being around them.
minerals
Right.
of all
Yeah.
kinds.
And we couldn't have
Yes.
communications
Right.
without crystals,
Right.
because each frequency that they have, like in a CB, they might have 40 channels. Each one has a different crystal in it that tunes it, okay? And it has to be tuned just to that. And we couldn't have gone to the moon without crystals. They would not have had the precise direction on the moon trip without the crystals.
Also, besides being an immune booster,
Uh-huh.
and we usually go through the thymus for that, but it'll travel. Say someone thinks they have a shoulder pain, but perhaps it's another part. Maybe it's an organ distress. The energy will actually go to the area. You really don't even have to get to the right point.
Can you
It's
explain a
very-
little bit to us about why you would go through the thymus? I know the thymus is they're finding out more and more about the thymus all the time, and it's
Right.
very
Well, the
important.
thymus is part of the endocrine system, and it's a very important gland. And if we notice, the heart resides very close to
Thymus.
that gland, and so they're very related. And everything in the world is related to love.
Right.
It really is what our planet is about, whether we stay in that vibration or not. So if we work and use this as our stargate, as our little, between the lower chakras and the higher chakras, this is the uniter.
The
So
connection.
this is the connection, this is the key to everything. And actually the ankh itself, and I'll come to that in a moment, but the ankh itself we wear over the thymus to also keep it constantly charged and
makes sense.
keep it at a level so that we're not lacking energy or whatever. But also going back to the laser, we'll get to the ankh next, but the laser, for the women out there, they'll love this. We can use it for facials, and it's a non-cutting, non-invasive type to be using. This is an energy laser. It's not cutting, not a non-cutting laser. So I actually do the face by doing little puncture points, acupuncture points, and the women will totally look different. They'll come out looking younger by
And again, it's
many,
a very,
many years.
it's a very scientific explanation. You tighten magnetically, everything's magnetic, and we are fighting gravity, right?
All the
Okay,
time.
and always. And so the wrinkles are because of the gravity. And so to tighten up the wrinkles or to make them disappear, you have to tighten up the muscles underneath. You see, instead of going plastic surgery, you just tighten up the muscles. So how they respond magnetically. So you go in and cause an energetics on the muscle tightens up and becomes more youthful, and the wrinkles start disappearing. Okay?
Sorry, well, I just love that we're coming up with all these new things.
So we have rejuvenation, we have, it helps with the toxins and the parasite control also. It will help to do some flushing. We find that working with the electromagnetic energy, it's actually the first, because we're dealing with light and sound. So it works very well at all the systems in the body at all levels.
Sound always, like, we don't hear it all the time, but the frequencies are always there, right, with the different
They
vibrations.
are. And sometimes we can't hear those.
Right, yeah, but it is there
Right.
constantly. Like, you can hear the humming of the universe if you really listen.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We were going to talk about the ankh. and
Yes.
I saw a picture
Well,
in
actually,
here.
I think before we talk about that, since we got into light,
laser.
we're going to stick with light here.
Can I just insert
and
one
color.
thing here, and that is that we're using red because red seemed to have been the most successful in the helium red lasers. for vitality. And although the color is not what is doing the job, it's the magnetics. The magnetics are riding piggyback on the back of the beam, just like in a microwave with a radio signal red. So it's very easy to explain this, okay? And so color therapy it just happens to be red worked, and we had red first because of vitality, you see, and it works very well.
In feng shui, we use the red spectrum. It represents the fire, and the fire also is associated with the heart and the eyes.
Regeneration,
Which-
circulation,
yeah,
stimulation,
which is
hormonal
probably
balance.
our biggest engine in here, our motor to keep things running well, right? So the
Exactly.
red makes sense, the red
Right.
spectrum.
But I had people that asked me for years, why can't you come up with some other color lasers, blue,
So, well, we
would be
can.
spiritual
They'll
and
do
green?
different things, though, do they?
Well, they do different things, but they were so expensive that no one could afford them.
And
Like
they
a
were the
blue-
wrong
a
material.
green laser and a blue laser.
They were the
So-
wrong gases that were being used. So when the breakthrough came through only about a year ago on the diode improvement, a Japanese scientist made a major breakthrough. And by doing that, what these are called is, we call these
lasers.
semi-lasers because they're not.
They simulate the
They're
laser.
not a laser in true form because it's the same guts, so to speak, the same internal part, the head, the diode of a laser. However, as the red is, like an example of this one, okay? But it does not have lenses focusing it. And all we need to do is get it to the crystal itself. So when the breakthrough was made on these, okay, then we were and this is so brand new. I mean, these are brand new just within this last week.
I hope they're getting it as bright as I see it. You know, I see it against this black to your left
Yeah.
there, and boy, it
Well,
shows
let's
up
put
bright.
the
Now, I
pulsing.
also developed the
like
same pulsing frequency, okay?
I was thinking if we had a black piece of paper we could put
Oh, we
behind
might
them.
have one. Let's
If
see.
there's a
How about
black-
this one? Oh, that's got stuff on it.
I also developed the same
Well, see if
pulsing
that
frequency,
helps.
okay?
Does that
Does
help
help
some?
some, I think.
That we had so much success with the red laser, so that we would drive it in under maximum,
Try this side.
okay?
Is that better?
I think it does show them up a little. I know the
Same
black.
pulsing
shows-
frequency.
Oh,
Yeah, there you
it
go.
reflects
And they could be
nicely.
used, these shafts are laser tubes, so that, and you can experience this yourself, you can just hold the tube and actually feel, or your thumb up on the point, which is, this would be used like the other one, but you can actually hold the tube and feel the energy going through it, the pulse of the frequency going through it.
You bet. And the green now is always kind of represented a healing color.
Overall body balancing and healing. And also, we use the simulators mainly for the chakra balancing. And
the
this, of
different
course, would be
chakras are
more
associated
These would be
with the
done on the
different colors.
chakras, you see.
Chakra.
That's why we've only developed
the
these
root
three.
chakra.
Uh,
And this would be the upper chakras, which could be the throat for the throat chakra. You might want to do the third eye or
Yes,
the crown
upper
chakra.
area.
So it just depends. Or you could use one or all in different parts of the body.
And of course, green is always good to follow any kind of treatment. And I didn't used to have a green laser, so I thought, well, I would just use a green light, okay, an intense full spectrum green light going through a gold filter or something to that effect to give it more power. Now with this, you can actually go back and forth between the different levels. Like the blue would actually work from here up and take in 3 chakras, and then the green would work from here down to the solar plexus, okay, and at least take in 2 or bridge the 3rd. And of course the red would work, it's a kind of a red-orange,
Red-orange
and
on
it
the
would
lower.
work on the lower 2 chakras, you see?
We have acupuncturists that really like these a
I
lot.
have to ask you now,
Uh-huh.
if you're marketing these, I want to know, how to get a hold of some. And I suppose they're kind of an expensive item to get a hold of. so,
all of
huh?
our items vary greatly.
Uh-huh.
And we're going to talk about our elixir water, and that starts at like $20, and we can go up, and we can go into higher priced items. So what we do, we don't just say you can buy this, we say we should test you. We prefer testing
And you use
you
this
to
in your
get-
healings? Do you use this when you actually see a client and do a healing?
Yes, I do.
Uh-huh.
I will do combinations of things. Or I can do the straight body work and straight massage. There's so much, it's all individualized. Everything we do, we either test them with the Curlian or we do the kinesiology, and we give them what they need. Not everybody needs, say you may not
Yeah.
need every one of these, but
Right.
somebody might come along and they need every color.
Mm-hmm.
Or you may not need the laser, but you need these, or the next person would be
And
the
again, the
opposite.
laser tube was put into place instead of just mounting this down here on the head without lenses. This is actually fiber optics and a tube, laser tube. And when you hold it like this, you can charge yourself up that way. And by putting your thumb on the point, it becomes even more max. So you're getting all of the energy through all of these fingers. You see?
I wouldn't
Like
be
this.
surprised if you make $1 million on these alone. I was going to say people from the audience tonight are probably going to want to call and see how they can get a hold of some
Oh,
of these.
that's
They're
great.
so pretty. Wouldn't they light up the Christmas tree nice?
Yes, they would do that too.
And of course, this kind of treatment
Time of year.
would
Yeah,
be the
this time
same
of year.
if you, after doing the stimulation, then green always follows as healing, okay? And so anything that needs balance and healing, you see, you can use the green to
And the
follow
blue
up.
would be real soothing, I suppose.
Yes,
'Cause I
calming.
Yeah, the calming.
Now, we
color.
also have little books and booklets that are available either with or without the little tools. And this one pertains to the chakras. And you'd be surprised how many people, I mean, I didn't do this for a long time because I thought everybody knew about the chakras. But you'd be surprised how many people don't.
Oh, yeah.
So I thought, well, we better put this little book together. And then these, of course, work very nicely on the chakras.
That's right.
So let's do the Ankh next. We have so much here, so we'll have to keep moving along.
I saw a picture kind of
There
towards
was
the
a
top.
picture somewhere.
I'll try to.
And
help.
actually, oh, there.
Here it
There
is.
it is, right here.
We have ours on too,
Yes.
which are
I can hold this up
live.
for you. When she talks
I
about
just
the
had mine
Ankh,
tucked in my sweater.
But this is the Ankh, and what we do, we actually test people for the Ankh because
Can you
we,
get a close-up of that, Jack? Yeah, there you go. That's a good close-up. of
what
the
we
Ankh.
do is test people on the Ankh. I usually have a dozen to 2 dozen Ankhs, and I let them choose the Ankh that they're drawn to. And it's a frequency thing that they're just automatically attracted
The
to.
Ankh will talk to them, I'm sure, and say,
Right.
this is the one for you. 'Cause
Right.
like the crystals do in the shop, they talk to the people and say, this is the one, I want to
Right.
go home with you.
That's exactly right. Some you just can't resist.
Right.
So then we test, and we test for the chakra stones. I call them the different chakra stones, and those are added. This is the heart center. And then we add the gemstones here, usually in this area. And I put them in chakra order because it's important not to, to keep that energy aligned.
Now, it's important to say why we chose an Ankh. Real quick, it was in 1980, I was privileged to join an archaeological expedition that was very significant, and we got allowed to go into a chamber that had been sealed since 1922.
The pyramid?
And in that chamber was a stylized Egyptian figure with an Ankh superimposed over the top of it. And it literally said, and this is in the old kingdom of Zozer's step pyramid of Saqqara, and the old kingdom had much more knowledge and they lost it gradually. And it literally said that the Ankh was the key to eternal life. And they always thought that was a religious statement. And they also it also said in the hieroglyphics underneath it that it was the key to the pyramids energy. So I literally went back to the hotel that night, and I've never found an example where the Egyptians actually exaggerate, especially in the Old Kingdom. So I grabbed a picture off of National Geographic's cover of Nefertiti's mirror, which is classic in the collection of an Ankh, and I started muscle testing it. I'm a Touch for Health instructor for 22 years. Muscle testing it kinesiology-wise and taking Kirlian photographs of people, about a dozen people, and it doubled their energy. And this was just cardboard with a picture on the front. So I thought maybe it's because of the symbols in the picture and so forth with the Ankh. So I took the picture off and just tested the cardboard, and it was the same. So I said, my goodness, if that tests that strong, what would it be like if we used the same materials that they used in what we did have of the treasure? Was the only thing was the king's was Tut treasure, and they used copper, silver, and gold in unison with each other. In other words, copper, silver, and then gold. So that is how this came about, and it took about 5 years. And then the secret was, at the same time, we were making the breakthrough on the laser. That's why the crystal point, as to the way it is, okay, is because when we discovered that if you fire a crystal in the reverse, if I can have the laser, please, okay, if you fire, take this as removable, if you do it in reverse, such as this, if that can be seen,
Yeah, that sure shows up good here. I hope they can
through
see
the
it.
point, okay? Or like that, or actually, you know, like that. You see? You
So
see
all
how
those
the
little
difference, you see how it looks
crystals at the
different and
shop.
it's absorbing the light.
Charge.
It's absorbing the energy, you see? That radiation is, see how it twinkles? Only crystal does that. It's absorbing it. So when we discovered that what that was doing in reverse is absorbing it, instead of going into the body or the point in this direction that you could direct it into, it was building up inside of the crystal. Again, the photograph proved that as it would build. All right? So then we started lasering. That's how come the onks are crystal. Okay?
There's an amazing capacity that a little crystal like that has, I know, as far as information in there too. They always talk about information that's locked inside of a crystal, you know, that especially there's different crystals for
The
different
information
things.
and
Yes,
also
what
to
it actually
transmit
does
and the
is
receiver both.
Yes, what it actually does is that we've discovered the laser maximizes the potential of the crystal. It brings it out of the realm of not being opened up to light or magnetic concentration into its full maximum power. And so when we encompass that in here, it retains it indefinitely. We've had them out since 1986, and we get tremendous feedback
talking
10
about the
years
Ankh?
later, the Ankh, yes.
Oh, yeah. I think before that.
Even maybe a little
His
before.
So you don't
Expedition
even
was
need
in
to
19
recharge them. You don't
No.
Never have to be
As long as you
recharged
wear
again.
it. As long as you're
We can
wearing it.
test that. We can take photographs. I've actually done this where somebody will walk in and they've been 5 years since they've had the Ankh, or even 10 years, and they come in. Let me test it, see where it's still at. And muscle test it. They're just as, or even stronger, because they've been interacting with their own magnetic field and with even incandescent. We discovered that even with artificial light, that it absorbs it like a sponge once it's been activated to its full potential.
May I ask, I'm familiar with crystals a little bit more now, and there's the different ones like the smoky crystals and the amethyst crystals.
Those
and
are the ones I use for the different chakras.
so they can also
So,
be
as an
used
example,
the same way.
I do the test and then I add, say, a smoky if they need it. And smoky is very grounding, and it's for very super sensitive star people.
protective.
Very protective. So if they needed that, I would record it. And then if they needed perhaps a citrine, I would record it. And perhaps they need an amethyst, and I would record it. And then I will test the combination of the three that was right for them. And if it works great, then that's their combination. And it will support, like citrine helps with the detoxification, it helps with the digestion,
and the solar
colon,
plexus,
and the solar plexus.
your power
Right.
center, and all of that. Yeah.
So it's
Again.
I was
fun.
thinking I might need a citrine because I often,
Here we
you know,
show.
such a softie. I need that.
Yeah,
more power.
protection. Yeah.
Here we have it, and this was, ironically, this was referred to in Egypt as the eye of God, okay, and whatever is placed in the center of that is the maximum power. So here you see a crystal in a pyramid shape in the middle, and this particular one, and then she would add other crystals, other gems, in accordance with the color chakras in the alignment, because this is actually the body duplicated, you see? It's sympathetic to the body.
And this part represents the DNA. The twist on the top represents, I actually twist it and do 6 strands now, and that represents the DNA of the body. So it can
very
actually
symbolic,
help
yeah.
us to move along and progress in our evolution. One of the major benefits of the Ankh is that it's very focusing, and I get a lot of feedback and a lot of testimonials from people on the Ankh, which is great, because then I can help people realize what it does for them. Sometimes if someone is going to do a detox, they might get a little headache, or they might have more movements, you know, they might have an emotional cleanse as well. So a lot of things pertain to the person individually. Again, not everybody's going to get that, but if you have a citrine, look out. You're going to get a lot of cleansing.
It'll set, and then you
Yeah.
just want to drink a lot of water and
Lots
get some
of
rest.
water and
quiet.
sleep if your body needs sleep. And one of the main things is, as I said, is the focusing quality. But sometimes it'll do other unusual things like clairvoyance. People will open up clairvoyantly. We've had allergies disappear overnight. We've had MS reduced. We've had people report divorce, and I go, oh gosh, I was like, oh, what happened?
Well, it's meant to
And it
be
was
at
like
that point, I guess.
They wanted the divorce, they
Uh-huh.
just couldn't go through
It
with it.
instigated it,
So
huh?
it instigated.
Because I know
supported
feng
that.
shui does that sometimes.
right.
You move something, you know, and then the
There
divorce.
goes-
A lady ran up to me one time and she said, since I moved my bed, I've gotten a divorce. And I couldn't tell whether she was happy or not at first. You know, I wasn't sure, but it ended up that it was a good thing. So, so she moved the
Right.
bed according
Right.
to feng shui. Okay.
So it's just an individual thing. You definitely get what you need.
Mm-hmm. Yep. You open up that energy, and you know, how do you guys feel about? You know, I'm sure that you're into this quite a bit too. That you know, they talk about right now the quickening and things moving
Oh,
faster.
yes.
That the Earth's vibration is lifting, and so we all need to lift our vibrations
Exactly.
in synchronicity with the Earth in order to.
A lot of
keep
these
things
tools
going
are for now, and
Mhm.
we've said for years that they're for the future. Well, it's no longer the future.
It's
It's
moving
now.
fast now.
It's now. And these electromagnetic tools are very supportive to raise our frequency and to keep us evolving and moving along at a rapid pace so we can keep up with the change on the planet.
Uh-huh.
The planet Earth is going to do its thing with us or without us,
Right.
and it's going to continue. And
Evolve.
it's
It's
going,
going to
to
evolve.
evolve no matter what. So we're on a little journey here.
You're
But
on a
these-
mission, I think. You
Right.
too. You've done well. I really, I want to just, you know, thank you for all the research and all the work that you've done. It seems like you put years into some of these things, I know.
Well, yes, we have.
Uh-huh.
And we actually have a lot of fun with it as well.
It
Some
seems like you do.
Some days I wonder, but when I have to do all the paperwork and all the drudgery things that go with it. But overall, we're very blessed with our work and what we do because we get charged along with it, and we're helping other people, and we get to meet all the star people, and it's very exciting that way.
Yeah.
And they do cluster in positive kind of shows that we're doing, like awareness shows and health shows. That is the positive element that they seem to cluster, birds of a feather come together. So the percentages go up from 5% as much as 70%. And actually, we just completed
did
a
a show
show.
this summer in July, and we had
100%.
100% star people
Oh, wow, that's
on the
wonderful.
photographs, and we were just elated. I mean, it was like, wow.
I think it's happening by osmosis, you know, as we sit here. I was going to ask you, would I be changing the subject too much if Lawrence, you could take us into a little bit of information about solar flares, because that's something that everybody wants to know about. We haven't
Actually,
had a show
yes,
about that.
because it's such a major thing that's happening to this planet right now, and it's a big part of the body of my research, simply because I found out a long time ago through studying Earth changes as a side thing. I've been lecturing on it for probably 25 years, but I found out that there's some certain things that affect us more than as a planet and as a body, more than anything else. And so we actually, Sandra actually put these books together because I
You've
was
written
doing
these?
everything.
Wow.
I was
didn't
actually
realize
doing
that.
everything on video.
I'd like to
and,
carry some of those
And,
as a
and this is
fundraiser.
Terra in Transition was the first one, and she was able to actually put this together, and so I got it in print. Otherwise, I probably would still be just putting things on video and upgrading it. I actually thought that it would not be able to go into a book simply because it was changing so fast. But you see here, Terra in Transition is exactly that. And actually, it had 2 contributing authors to it and endorsed by Brad and Sherry Steiger. And so this was basically all about what causes earthquakes and what the things that we're doing with our thought forms and how they're affecting the planet Earth, okay? And they're affecting it in places that are already traumatized. There are certain areas that are more vulnerable because the areas have been traumatized. Through the Mideast, as an example, Afghanistan right now has had so many 50 years of, at least 50 years of constant war. You see, and more like 200 years of constant turbulence. And one of the major faults are going right through Afghanistan. And it's on the same parallel, exactly on the opposite side of the planet from California, from the San Andreas Fault.
So those actually the negative things coming up from the faults, which I think I've read and heard that the faults rubbing together and things can create those positive, is it eons or ions?
Ions.
Ions, yeah, positive ions, which, like we learned in feng shui, can create lots of different diseases and things in the body too.
That's right.
But could create that negative feeling, like when you cut the air, argumentative energy and things like that, which could create the war zones, the war feelings.
Well, my guidance gave me this at 1978, woke me up at 4 o'clock in the morning, told me to go down and get a globe, and they show me how the Earth works in its meridians. And I had to change the poles to where they originally were when the planet got hit 12,500 years ago in Atlantis, and that is not a myth. It's really something that happened. The Earth wobbled, and that's why it's 23 to 26 degrees off now. The actual real poles are the magnetic poles, and so because of that, she's trying to right herself in a sense. Okay, she's trying to correct that situation that we created. So they showed me how to map out the earthquakes and where they were going to go, not so much as a prophecy on earthquakes. They didn't want me in the prophecy business, but more as a rear view mirror to see what we're creating on the planet as an entity, that we're constantly interacting with this. Now, they said to me at that time that the sun was a catalyst, and I said, oh, well, you can tell me about the sun, and they said, no, not now, later. And that was it for 20 years, exactly the same time, 4 o'clock in the morning, woke me up exactly the same day, 20 years later,
20
to
years
the day,
later.
to the hour, they woke me up again and said, now we're going to tell you about the sun, okay? And how
You
that,
have a good memory,
yes,
Lawrence, too,
and how
don't
the
you?
sun affects everything on planet Earth, you see?
Well, that would make sense to all of us, I think.
Okay,
I mean,
so
the
that
sun is
brought
our
about Thunderous Days of Change, which was all about the sun, and I also had to set up a website to work with this, because if you go into the website, you go into the book, it's black and white in the book and not in color, so that I can put it out inexpensively for people, but it shows diagrams and how to use it, and then they could go to the website, and the website has links right to the scientific site, so you don't have to fool around looking for them, and you know how to use the material. So this is what they basically told me. They said the sun is a holographic expression of what is happening on the Earth on both sides, okay? In other words, holographically, it's just like taking a planet that you can see through, a glass ball, that you can see both continents. That's how I measure the earthquakes, is that what's affected on one side travels through the Earth to the other, okay? And they said it's the same thing, but the sun, two-dimensional surface, what we see is showing on the surface of the sun actually what is going on the Earth, with the sun starting first with the sun spots and then graduating
And people actually feel certain days where, you might be lethargic, you might be tired, you might be cranky, you might be irritated, you might be aches and pains in the body. And sometimes those are indicators. And it could mean you're just you're happening to have a low day, but if that happens to me, I check with my friends, and if everybody in Seattle or
They're all feeling
elsewhere
something.
and they're feeling it, I say, oh, okay. And then we can verify it by looking on.
could be
This
the
is
solar flares.
11/26,
Or vice
So
versa.
it just happened around Thanksgiving.
Yeah, we were
And
told
this is
one
a
of the
major
largest
flare
the largest
that we're
flares.
encountering, that we've been encountering right now. They've been hitting maximum way beyond the period of time that this 23rd cycle was supposed to have ended, which is every 11 years there's a cycle of flares comes up, and so we get the solar flares. We get these sun spots. Well, here's another version here, an example with through a telescope, and this shows the flares proceeding out, as you see there.
Can you explain to us, Lawrence, a little bit about the difference between sunspots and solar flares?
Sunspots, according to the University of Montana, which actually in Billings, Butte, they actually got a grant to study that, and their department, and they've come out with major things on it.
At Montana
And what is actually occurring, if you notice here, this is the spot in the middle. Here is actually a telescope, like you would hold something up over the sun. It's a disc, so it wouldn't hurt your eye, and so that you could see the flares. Okay? And so consequently, what this is a disc that is a disc that is held up in a telescope that's inside the telescope, so you can see the flares coming out, and they're different colorations that are artificial.
Pictures are wonderful.
Okay.
Oh, this one, I couldn't believe.
Now, normally, I really
That
should show
one is,
one that
most unusual.
does not look like this. Let me just show as an example. This is another one like the one I just got through showing you, and it has an artificial black disc silhouette over it, like a eclipse. Okay, it would be in a telescope. Now, notice there the flares that are going on. Notice how similar they are to the Kirlian photograph fingertips in the
Oh, which one?
fingertips, the Kirlian.
Oh,
Okay.
Oopsie.
Kirlian, where'd you
Notice
go?
that, noticed this a long time ago, years ago, that actually what was occurring, I said, this looks a lot, this is before satellite photos, that I could get photos from satellite, which is what these are. I said, looks a lot like where they'll see where the empty spaces are and where the
Also
flares
looks like the
are.
iris
you
of the
see?
eye, too.
Yeah,
Get
you
our
see,
eyes
and
in
it's
there,
the same
get your
thing with the
eyeballs in
iris of
there.
the eye. Okay, and so nature repeats itself numerous different ways.
Yeah.
That's why Dr. Bernard Jensen knew that the iris and the fingertips had to match. Okay, and we were able to do that. But this always got me here because I used to look at these eclipses and say, there's something going on in the flares way back when they were only being taken by primitive satellites or primitive telescopes, which today we have them halfway to the sun floating out there and to photograph these things, okay? And so I just wanted to bring that point up because it's very important to know that everything is magnetic in the universe. If it's a galaxy, if it's a sun, if it's a planet, or if it's us, okay? Now,
I've actually done my own photograph on some days that I felt like the flares might be extreme, or if I felt an effect from it.
Did they enhance the
Well,
energy or take it away? I'm curious.
Usually they were a little dimmer. They weren't quite
Well,
as bright.
Because the reason I asked you that right off the bat is they were telling us now more about these solar flares and when they're coming and not. And I'm getting a lot of people coming to the shop saying they are being affected by them. Their energy is a little lower.
Yeah, you
is
can
what,
feel it.
Is what,
Definitely feel it. And it doesn't mean it's all bad either, though.
No.
It's all helping
this picture here
progress.
would be, as an example, would be a screened version so that you can look at the sun. It's like looking at the sun through a smoked glass in a sense, all right? So that would be closer to normal color. But the other things, the one that you just saw in yellow that Sandra was reacting to, and the two that we use the most, okay, is the yellow and the red. Now the yellow here is during major solar activity, and you normally do not see all of this glitter around it and everything sparkle around it. That is because the sun is going through major flares and it's hitting the satellite that is between us and the Earth, okay, or between the Earth and the sun. There is a midway, a satellite, which is taking these pictures. So this is ultraviolet UV, which gives us life force energy. Plants and everything survive because of UV. So this is UV, and it takes 7.5 seconds to get to the Earth. And so we get an indication of what is coming because the satellite can take that picture and see it ahead and shut things down so it's not destroyed or burn up its lenses, and we have an indication that it's coming. And then what we focus on is this one. Now this is artificial coloration, but this is the same sun you just looked at, but this is only X-ray energy, what they call soft X-ray, and it's really an intense magnetic effect is what it is, okay?
I have to ask you a question here, Lawrence, because when you threw out the thing about the 7.5 minutes or seconds, was it? Did you say seconds or minutes a minute ago?
When it comes to the Earth.
Yeah, you mentioned that time, and then so what is it when they tell us that light takes, isn't it light years or 186,000
Why does radiation come so fast
compared to
compared
the
to
light?
light?
Oh, it's the other way around. This one takes 48 to 72 hours, okay,
okay,
to
that
hit the
window.
Earth because magnetics travels much slower.
So this is the
Okay, the
magnetics.
magnetic intensity, okay, what they call X-rays, all right, travel much slower, and the coloration is artificial, just so you can tell the difference. And it starts with a dark spot, a sunspot, and that's where, because that is an absence of magnetic energy, it's what I actually call reverse of that, or anti-gravitational, and I believe that's what's really going on, and it causes a flare to come out of that. It's like a malfunctioning chakra or an acupressure point that is overcharged, and a flare really comes out of that dark spot, or the spots, okay? So then they have been trying to determine that by watching the spot and watching a buildup around it, okay? And it's just like watching a volcano ready to go, in a sense, you see? And so with this, we can actually pinpoint where the activity on the Earth is going to be. I can because, again, it's holographically superimposed of where the planet is going to receive its intensity.
Now, when you said it goes all the way through the planet, is that like say an X-ray machine can go all the way through our bodies? Is it similar that the rays from
yes,
the sun?
actually the scientists have recently, within this last year, they call it that they can see the backside of the sun. They can tell what's going on on the backside of the sun, which is not facing us, because of activity that they're seeing in the front side. Okay, it's kind of complicated, but that gives them an edge on knowing what's going on scientifically, okay? And they can determine a flare that is starting. Now, the important point is that when we see it like this, it is about, we got a 48 to a 72-hour period before it hits us. And that's what knocks satellites out, is not ultraviolet, but the magnetics, okay? Because of the chips in there, the electronic stuff, it takes and messes up all the radio frequencies, and it affects us the same way, okay? So when we get flares, everything goes intense, all right? And we can actually spot it, the effects that it's having on people in the Kirlian. It shows up in the Kirlian photograph that if a person is being able to keep their vibrational frequency up high enough to be able to flow with the increased energies, or if they're causing blocks that are going to cause them to short circuit.
It's very important when you feel that and you know that's happening to slow down, relax with it. That's when all the accidents occur. Very often, the
Again,
freak accidents and whatnot.
This one would be a more illustrative of what flares look like, you see? Again, you see?
Did you want to show the
Right, and they're
aurora?
probably finding out more and more about these flares all the time. Can they predict when we're going to be hit by major flares, or do we have to take it as it happens?
Can you predict the flares in advance? Yes.
The scientific community has been attempting to do this, but lately it's been surprising them. They keep getting
They're not
caught
even-
off guard because everything, the intensity is building, and it's brand new. Like, we should have ended this cycle way back in August. Actually, the first of the year started, it should have started to go down. Like all 11-year cycles, it should have started to go down, and instead it's been increasing and increasing. So this is obvious that we're in a mega cycle, which could be,
When they talk about the Kali Yuga cycle, in that 26,000-year cycle, that the Earth is now coming to the
That's
golden
right.
age and the age of Aquarius, could it be that it's also
That's
build-
exactly right,
building?
and that's why I don't know if she has my other book there that I did. I think you do have it.
Which one?
The the planets alignment.
Oh, this one?
Okay, yes. Beyond 2000 was written, and here was an extreme thing that went on with the sun in the magnetics of it. Okay, and I chose this one, and actually the astronomer sent this in, or actually the solar physicist sent this in to the Art Bell Show, and it went on his website. I'm sure most people know about the Art Bell Show, 600 Radio, and he showed this on there because he said in his 20 years as an astrophysicist, he's never seen anything like this one, okay, with this extreme hot spot there, and then this cross. And of course, I immediately got my guidance, said, remember the prophecy, there will be a cross seen in the heavens when the changes occur. And so I related to that, and also because the only time you see dark spots is antimatter, or the absence of magnetics, because that's what the red is. Artificial coloration is picking up soft X-ray magnetics, okay? So this was a very extreme thing, and it happened, it's dated at the bottom here, May 5th, 2000, it was the alignment, which this book was all about, Beyond 2000 Solar Sun Flares. And what I was trying to do was show that the solar flares and the alignment were tied in with each other to maximize the changes that are going on with the Earth, okay? They were actually forcing us into a higher frequency, all right? So that we would be ready for what was coming, all right? The change in frequency.
Can I ask, Lawrence, do the rest of the planets, this would probably take us another program, because we're definitely going to have you guys back, I know, because this is so interesting to cover this material, and I know that we've just touched on the surface of what you know. But could I ask that question about the planets? Are you doing any investigation or anything about how the planets are all affecting that also, or are they being affected the way Earth is being affected from the solar flares and things?
Absolutely. Like as an example that I was going to show here, that the one that may have gotten mixed up in here, the way that I pull down on the same at the same time. No, the Earth changes.
A lot of information here. I want to talk to you
The
guys.
earthquake stuff. One of these.
I'm not sure which
I
one
pull
you
down at the same time that I check the sun. I pull down the latest earthquake activity. I don't think this is it either. There's another
There's
paper.
another one right in here.
Oh, there
it
you
is
go.
here. I
Keep
pull
digging.
down-
Keep digging.
This is kind of
I'll be
faded.
the digger.
All right.
But I pull down from USGS earthquake activity around the world. Okay, it's a little bit on the faded side there, the blue ink. Conserving my blue ink. Okay, but I pull that down, and it also shows where they are on the map. Again, this is a little faded, okay, on a map of the planet, and all those little spots on there are earthquake activity, and the intensity is registered here, okay? So that the bigger the circle and the coloration shows the depth. And so basically, this is what I'd been doing the longest, because I was doing this out of the newspaper once a week and had to play catch up 5 days later, long before I got into computers. So I've been doing this for 15 years. And tracking it in the newspaper after the fact. Okay, that's why they wanted me to do it after the fact. Okay, because they knew I didn't have satellite capabilities then. So the last 5 to 7 years now, I've been doing it in this manner, tracking it, and it's the way the earthquakes fall straight across. That's what Terran transition shows, how the earthquakes on one side affect the continent on the other side, the opposite side of the planet. It's just like it goes right through the core of the planet and registers on the other side. And I can, certainly there is a predictability, but it's more important that we understand the weak places and why it's happening, okay? And so I pull up, magnified every one of those areas, places like right now in Afghanistan, and one of those in there has that, and it shows that major earthquakes that are occurring in Afghanistan, and I pull up a concentrated map of that to show that the earthquakes are occurring in the same parallel in Afghanistan, as an example, as they are occurring and ricocheting over into California.
On the other side.
I'm pretty sure I thought I had them here.
You know, I was thinking that I got to go see that show when NASA was here, and they had it up on the big screen at the university, and they showed the satellite pictures of the Earth. And really, at the that was the very first time that I was so, awestruck by the Earth as a whole. You could see that it was almost like a being,
Well, look at
like
this.
it definitely had its parts and all of its different heat systems and everything, because they showed like the infrared. Somehow they do it to light up the warmer areas in the ocean, and the warmer areas in the land and stuff. And I just thought, for the first time, that was just
Made the connection.
I made the connection.
Yeah,
Totally.
I
The Earth
always
is
see
definitely
little faces and little things in
Yeah.
the sun.
This is it here. This is just to show you a blow up that I did, and very recently, just a few days ago, with a high amount of activity, bombing, and high concentration in the northern area of Afghanistan. And here, this one is was reprinted only because a major earthquake was hitting there. in the 5 range, as you can see if I'm moving it up here. This is exactly where all the war activity and intensity is occurring right now.
Right.
And we're getting the same cluster along the coast in California and in Oregon and even in Washington, okay, as it moves across. So this is a direct parallel from one place on the planet to the other, all right? And that's how, and this is what they call the theoretical P wave. This is how the ricochet works. The scientific community, they say theoretical. They actually show it, that this is the earthquake in Afghanistan, and where it focuses its attention in the P wave here is on the California coastline. And we've had a numerous amount of clusters. They're concerned because they're called donut clusters. They're actually a clustering earthquakes that are happening in California that they think is an imminent possibility of a larger
The big one, maybe, that
major
they talk
earthquake in
about.
California that's coming down the pike here very soon. And what we're doing, and what they wanted to point out to me, is that the same thing happened in the Gulf War, where we pounded the heck out of, with conventional bombs, Iraq in a short period of time. We actually fractured the mantle, and it started going right straight across on the same 33rd parallel right to California, and we had clusters there.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
it's definitely ricochets, I'm sure, because when you see the Earth and the way that it reacts, and I mean, these pictures are amazing, but I love that because it's all so interconnected, just like we are.
It is.
And you know, we've got to stop pretty soon here because we've gone on, and I know they've got to close the studio here. But this has been so much fun. We've got to do it again. Will you guys promise me that we can have you back again? And before we leave, though, I'd love for you to think about something else you want to share, you know, here at the last minute that we might not have covered, that you want to let our audience know about.
Well, what I would like to say is that what we're all experiencing right now, especially since September, is a lot of chaos and major, major change, and nobody knows how to act. Nobody knows, nothing is the same, everything's unusual. And I think that it's major disruption in our lives to create the change that we often resist. So it's a very positive move. It's the planet helping us move along in our spiritual evolution. And I also see that people need to come together more as a result of that. And there is
talk
an
about it and
element of
share
that.
and
Well,
share
there's an
things.
element of unity even out of the chaos. So it's
there
like,
is.
you know,
And I don't know about you guys, but I've also found that what helps me too is to have a little extra alone time too. So it's like you need the sharing and the talking and actually communicating and socializing about everything that's going on, because people are coming in the shop saying, "Do you feel how fast everything's
Right.
moving?" You know?
Right.
And then I think we all need to bring up our
Have your
stress
space.
reducers and
Right.
our just, you know, alone
Right.
time to
Right.
reflect on what
and
all
know
that
how
is.
your body feels and how your emotions feel, and then, you know, act accordingly.
Yeah,
If you
and
need to
be
be
aware.
alone, be alone.
And what you said, you probably have something else to say too, Lawrence, but I was going to say one thing you mentioned is that I think it's so important now, and I've talked about this on other shows we did, but right now the responsibility of what we each, our thought patterns and what we say is rapidly you know, moving and affecting the earth and affecting everyone else. So we do all have to be more aware that it's not just how you feel about yourself now. You also have to take everyone into
And it
consideration.
shows up on the Curlian. If it's a personal thing, you know, personalized, it does show on that Curlian.
Because it doesn't just affect you, it affects
Right.
the whole mass out
Right.
there.
the acceleration that happened with 9/11 pulled people together, and it also pulled a destructive element that is going on too, unfortunately, without taking political issue here. But it's just
In
that.
fear, there's an element of fear as well.
So
So
the-
you see both sides.
Yeah.
So these positive and negative balances, extremes, are coming into action now. All right? And so what I think our service is that we can show people in their energy field, in their aura, what they're doing with themselves, and not only with their thought forms, but with their diet and with their environment and with how the solar flares are affecting them and the extremes.
It's all important. And can we, on that note, can we be sure and give everybody your website and
Yes.
your phone number if you'd like,
Okay,
so that
the
they
phone
can get a
number
hold of you?
is
And-
406-756-4140, and the website is
Okay,
I
it's
never remember
star.
it.
It's one word, star, STAR, UNLTD, at Ronan, RONAN .net.
That's the email.
Okay. Oh, that's the email. I'm sorry.
That's why I gave it
Okay.
to you.
That's right.
That's the
Star
okay.
Unlimited.
Star
With,
Unlimited.
yeah, STARUNLTD
Yes.
at Ronan.net.
Yes. And
And the web is Ronan.net
yes.
That's it.
//
Which
little
is a
squiggly,
little
Yeah, the little
that.
tilde.
Star Unlimited.
Yes.
STARUNLTD.
That's abbreviated, right?
Well, and if you want to call the Feng Shui Center, I'll be sure and get all your information too, in case they didn't get it tonight when we listed it. I appreciate you guys being here so much, and if you don't mind, we just take a second to thank everybody that helps make this show possible. Frank, the producer, and you can find him over at the Feng Shui Center again on Tuesdays and Saturdays doing the palm readings and the iridology. And Jack is our cameraman. He puts in a lot of long hours here with very little thanks, but but we thank you, Jack. And back here in our background, we get tapestries from the Rainbow's End, which is a little shop just right next door to the Feng Shui Center, and we really enjoy them and all that they do for
What
us.
I also like to add is that we have intentions that I haven't discussed with you of being able to come to Missoula more often and
Good.
do photographs for your people through your facility.
I'd love that because like I said, we've had you there before, and I would like to have you back many more times.
Yes. We're currently a little more available, but that doesn't always last long.
You get a
So,
little closer now too.
Right.
You're in Tulsa now.
That's right.
Okay. It's been great having you guys
thank
here.
you for
Thank you.
inviting us.
Good night, everybody, and this was a wonderful show for the audience.
Thanks.
An excellent show. You know what's really strange is for the first time since I've been doing this, I get this beep in their earphone.
I'm Sandra, and I'm going to give a little brief rundown on some of the products and tools that we have used over the times and over actually about 20 years. We are using a system called the Trimune system, and I want to talk specifically about the electromagnetic, the biochemical, and the cleansing process. They all involve a little bit different areas, different aspects. The electromagnetic is going to mainly focus on frequency modulation, pain control, immune boosting, and rejuvenation. And that is energetically. The biochemical, we like to concentrate on getting those natural killer cells and the T cells to be enhanced and strengthened. And we're doing that with a special product that we have recently been introduced to, and we see it is very effective, and that is the BioMune. We are also think it's very important that the digestive enzymatic process is included so that the toxins and the garbage that we ingest, not only that through the foods that we eat, but the poisons that remain in our body, we like to see those be cleansed. And one of the main processes for that is using enzymes. It builds a nice strong foundation so that we can get the debris out of the body, get the little cellular rejuvenation going. So these are the three main categories, and I'm going to focus mainly on the electromagnetic tools which we have developed. Dr. Lawrence Kennedy and myself, Sandra Sitzman, have developed over about 20 years time period. Before I get into that, we can also show very briefly the Kennedy-Curlian technique, which is a process whereby we take a Curlian photograph, which means that we are photographing the fingertips and we are capturing the aura or the energy bodies, and those are not just the physical body, but the mental, physical, emotional, and intuitive levels of our being. What we can do is then analyze and define what those little circles mean. These little circles are showing our magnetic strengths or weaknesses, as well as our chemical strengths or weaknesses. This first whole row that we see here is a left and a right hand. And the left and the right hand can be very different, although we do like to see the balance of the two. And what we have with the left hand is how we receive our energy. That reception is from either it can come from cosmic transmissions, it can come from receiving from other people, it can come from receiving from ourselves. While the right hand is the outgoing energy, it shows how we use this energy that we have received. So we would like to see a complete cycle and a complete circle of energy, giving and receiving, giving and receiving. If it's not balanced, we would like to help the individual change that, and we do it mainly electromagnetically, but have most recently added the components of the chemistry and discussing more the cleansing aspects, the enzymatic process. This set was a left and a right hand. This set is an after photo, meaning after some of the repair had been taken place, and shows very nice balance, left and right hand, left and right. And it does still have a few breaks there, but overall, we look for that balance. That's what we like to see. And we really like to see the changes from this to this. Now, some people might, I'm going to just turn it this way, and it's not really accurate to do that. But this, sometimes people begin very strong, like this. Sometimes they are stronger electromagnetically and chemically to begin with. This is one way that we can actually show and test how these tools affect our energy and how they will support and strengthen our energy. What I'm going to start with is actually the Ankh. This is a little picture of the Ankh, and I'll actually show you the one I'm wearing if I can get a good close-up here. This Ankh I made many years ago, but we just happened to show it as one of the ways of putting it together, which shows nicely the upper twist. We're using 3 strands, copper, silver, and gold, and it represents the DNA of the body. We're using the carbon bar here to mimic the carbon atoms of our body. We're using the quartz crystal here, which shows how our cells are made up of crystal. It's coated in at a deep cellular level with this crystallization effect. So what we're doing is bringing together the female and the male into that neutral point, which is actually considered here the heart center. And we also will test individuals to show how we can support their chakra systems or the energy balancing parts of the body. The Ankh will also shield from low frequencies such as computers. Those of you that use computers excessively or are around a lot of low frequency equipment, this is a very good shield for that. But what I do is test to see what other